and welcome. In this video, we are going to discuss the another high availability and disaster recovery solution in SQL Server, that is always on availability groups. We are going to see the concept and prerequisites, configuration, failover, advantages and disadvantages. We will first see the concept. This was introduced in the year 2012 with SQL Server 2012. Basically, this was introduced to overcome the disadvantages that are existing in the mirroring and failover cluster. We have seen in database mirroring, it is only DB level high availability, and also we cannot keep the secondary database in read-only mode, and also it eats a lot of bandwidth. Whereas in failover clustering, it only provides a high availability. It will not act as a disaster recovery solution. Hence, this was developed which provides us a high availability and disaster recovery solution. In this, we group set of databases which are known as availability groups that can fail over together. We can deploy this in standalone SQL Server instances, or also we can do it in failover SQL Server cluster instances. If you use SQL Server failover cluster instance, you need shared disk. But if we go with SQL Server standalone instance, no need of using shared disk. It will use the local resources. Let me explain you using a simple diagram. So here you see the node 1 is the machine 1 and node 2 is our machine 2. In node 1 we have a SQL Server instance installed, which is a standalone instance and that hosts two databases. Similarly, we have another node 2 which is other machine, where we also install SQL Server standalone instance, and both these uses the local disk as a resource. So what happens if your application is dependent on two or more databases? We group those databases so that they can fail over at a time. So in this video, I am going to create two new databases and I am going to group those databases as a availability group and perform the failover operation to the node 2 machine. And for this, we require Windows failover cluster service. So basically, I can say always on is a combination of database mirroring and Windows failover clustering. So in case if this node 1 goes down and we have our databases in node 1, so these two databases should be failover to the node 2. We can also perform manual failover. However, this model supports automatic failover when we use SQL Server standalone instances. So let us see what are the prerequisites. It is strongly recommended to use Windows Server 2012 or later versions, and the host computer should be a Windows Server failover cluster node, and your SQL Server version which are participating in this should be the same version, that is both should be 2014 or both should be 2016 likewise. And each instance requires a database mirroring endpoint, and make sure your databases are in full recovery mode. It will not support simple or bulk log recovery models, and you cannot combine database mirroring and always on for the same database. So make sure that feature is not enabled for this database where you are performing always on. And the most important thing is the SQL Server service account must be able to access each and every replica. So therefore it must be a domain account. So let us see the configuration. Before I proceed with configuration, I strongly recommend you to watch my previous videos where I have explained how to configure Windows Server failover cluster. I am providing you the link in the description. You can watch from there. So I will show you my setup. I have three virtual machines. A101 is my domain controller, A102 is my node 1, and A103 is my node 2, where I have installed SQL Server standalone instances in A102 and A103. So let me go to these machines, A103 and A102. You can see here, this is my SQL Server Management Studio where I have connected both the instances. So here you have always on high availability. But before you use this feature, we need to enable this feature in Configuration Manager. I have not yet enabled it, but when you go here and expand the tab, it will give you a message stating the always on feature must be enabled for the server instance, and before you create an availability group on this instance. To enable it, go to configuration manager, select the server services, right click. I'll show you. Okay, go here, configuration, SQL Server configuration manager. Let's say go to SQL Server Services, and then here right click, properties. Here you can see always on high availability. Go here and you can see the cluster name here. I have already created the cluster. Tick the checkbox, enable always on availability groups, and apply. Okay, you need to restart the service. Right click and restart. Similarly, do the same thing in A102 machine. Go to your configuration manager, properties, enable, apply. You can see you need to restart the service. Okay, right click and restart. Service is restarted. Now go back to SQL Server Management Studio. Refresh the instance. And now you can see you can able to access this tab because we have enabled that feature in the configuration manager. Here you need to just go here and right click, new availability group wizard. But before that, let me check whether I am having any databases or not. I have no databases, only one database. Let me create a fresh database. Go here, new query. I am creating 3 databases here, DB1, DB2 and DB3. Refresh databases, you can see the databases here, DB1, DB2 and DB3. Now let me insert some tables and insert data into it. So I am inserting one table and inserting few records over there. Similarly, insert few tables and records into the DB2 database. At present, I am not using this DB3 database. I am going to create availability group using these 2 databases only. Okay. Now you are going to take the backup of these 2 databases which you want to make the availability group and restore here with no recovery. If you have not done that step, you cannot do the availability group. Let me show you that. Before I take the backup, let me show you what error you will face. Go here, go to availability, always on high availability, availability groups, right click, new availability group wizard, click next. You need to give the availability group name, avail group. You can give some name. Click next, and you can see here you cannot go further. The status is full backup is required for these databases, and here you can see database is mirrored. You cannot use this database as a part of your availability group because database mirroring is deployed here. So for these 2 databases, I am going to take the full backup and restore at the second array. I am just minimizing this tab and going to take the backup of these 2 databases and restoring here. Okay, taking backup of 2 databases. db1 and db2 and storing in the local path C folder. Same folder. Execute this. Execute. Okay. Now backup has been completed. Now you are going to restore these two backups on this. So let me show you the backup files. Here the backup files are. Now copy these backup files in the A103 machine. We are in A102. So go to A103 machine C folder. Paste here. Now restore it. Go here. Open new query. Or you can also do using GUI. Over here, database, right click, restore database. Restore database from a device. Browse the path where you have placed here backup files. I placed it in A103 folder, and these are my two backup files. Okay. And you are going to restore it with no recovery. Okay. And that's it. You can just click OK. We had some error. Maybe we need to place these files, MDF and LDF files, in the other folder. Let me do it once again, one by one. First I'll go with db1 database and OK. So I'm placing in other folder. You can change the folder path here. Here you can change the folder path. So let me place in this folder itself and go with restore with no recovery and OK. Database restored successfully. You can see it is in restoring mode. Similarly, restore db2 database. Files, relocate to this folder itself. Options, restore with no recovery and OK. You can see now our databases has been restored successfully. Now go to the always on availability new availability group wizard, where it previously said to take the full backup. You can see here it said full backup is required. I'm just going to refresh this window. You can see it says meet prerequisites. Done. Our prerequisites are met. For this database we did not yet perform any full backup, so it doesn't meet our prerequisites. Okay. Now click next. Here you need to add the replicas. One is primary and you can have secondary replicas. Like that you can have up to 8 secondary replicas, a total of 9 replicas, 1 primary and 8 secondary replicas. So right now I don't have 8 replicas here. I have set up only 2 instances. This is my primary and this is my secondary. Okay. Add the replica and this is my secondary replica. Otherwise it doesn't show the server name here. You can browse from here. Here you can keep the secondary read-only mode. Here you have 3 options. No, yes, read intent only. It means if you keep no, secondary will not be available for read-only mode. If you keep yes, secondary will be available for read-only mode, so that the reporting services can connect to the secondary replica and can decrease load on the primary replica. In most cases, the read-only applications like reporting services and other services connect to the secondary replica so that it reduces the load on the primary server, which is a production server, and it acts as a load balancer. So I am going with readable S. And here you have one more option, read intent only. It means the applications or the users who have only read-only permissions, they can connect to the secondary. Okay, going with S option. Here you can also go for add Azure replica, where you can give your Azure databases and endpoints. Here endpoints I have already configured. If you have not configured, it will give you an option where you can configure it. Otherwise, I have already made a video on how to make the endpoint and how to configure endpoint. I will leave link in the description. You can watch it from there. And backup preferences. Since I have only 2 replicas, and you can select this option as per your requirement. You can see the description here. Automated backups for this availability group should occur on secondary replica. If there is no secondary replica available, backups will be performed on the primary replica itself. So I am going with the first option, prefer secondary. And listener. Here you need to create an availability group listener. So this name we are going to give it to the application, so that application can connect using this listener name, and those will be placed in machine 1 or machine 2 depending upon the availability. I am giving app listen, and you can give the default port number 1433, which is a SQL Server default port number, and add the IPs. Click on add. So this IP you are going to give it to the application team, where they take this IP and keep it in their configuration file. So let me give it to 192.168.30.31. So this is my IP address of this listener. Click OK, and we are good to go to the next step. You remember this name, app listen, where we connect to the SQL Server using this virtual name. Click next, and here you can go with the join only option, because we have already restored the database and log backups to the secondary server. If you have not restored your database backup, you can go with this full option, and you need to specify the shared location, which is accessible by all replicas. So in my case, I am going with join only. Click next, and you can see the results here. Success, skip. You need to rerun the validation. If there are any errors or warnings, it will display here, and you need to resolve those errors. Rerun validation. You can click next, and you can see the summary, your availability group name and databases and its size, and the replicas you have added, and the endpoints, everything. You can see the summary, and finish. If you want to see more details, you can just click here, and you can see the status, success. It takes few minutes to set up. So if you are watching for the first time, and if you want to understand how the Windows failover cluster setup has been done, you can watch my previous videos. I will leave link in the description. First set up the Windows failover cluster, and then you can start always on. And as per the update in the Microsoft website, database mirroring is going to be depreciated in the new future, and always on availability will be made mandatory for the users who want to use database mirroring. You can see the wizard completed successfully. Just close it, and now you can see the available group here. This is a primary, and when you go here and availability groups, you can see this is our secondary. So you can expand this. You have availability replicas. This is my primary and this is my secondary instance, and you can also see the availability databases which are a part of availability group. We have 2 databases, DB1 and DB2. So we'll see how failover happens. First, let us see manual failover. Just go here, availability group, right click, you can see failover option. Once you do failover, this instance will become secondary and this instance will become primary. That is, here it will turn to primary, it will turn to secondary. Just go here, right click and failover. So here it is in asynchronous mode. So if it is in asynchronous mode, we'll have a data loss because there is a data delay between the primary and secondary. Click next. Click here to confirm the failover. Connect the secondary. Next, you can see the summary here. Finish. We are performing the failover here. So failover has been completed. Now just go and see the roles. Refresh the instance. Refresh both the instance. Now you can see under availability groups, this has become the secondary. You can see instance 1 has become secondary and this has become a primary. That status you can see here. You can see here A103 has become primary and A102 has become secondary. So this is how the operation, and you can also change the mode of operation, synchronous or asynchronous, from here. Right click on availability group, your group name, and then properties, and here availability mode, change it to synchronous commit and asynchronous commit. We have two options, and in synchronous operation only we can have the failover mode as automatic, but if I select it asynchronous, you cannot go for automatic failover. So I'm keeping it asynchronous, synchronous mode, and failover type as automatic, and click OK. Now you can just refresh the instance and check the state of databases. You can see both are in synchronized. And let us say if this primary is not available. At present this is our primary, right? Instance A103 is our primary replica, which is this. Let me stop this instance and see what happens. Let me switch off the machine itself. This is A102. I'm just keeping it off. So now check, this machine is off. It means this instance will go down. Now see just refresh the instance and go to availability group, and you can see the state as resolving. When this instance has come up, it will become normal, and you can see since it has happened the automatic failover because we have made the mode of operation as synchronous. Automatic failover happens, and you can see this has become a primary. This is our primary now, okay, which is in resolving state. Now let me switch on this machine once again and see what happens. It is resolving. Once I switch on this machine, it will become normal. Both will be in synchronous mode. The machine is started. Just refresh the instance. Go here and you can see the replicas. This has become secondary and this is become online. So now this is our secondary and this is our primary. You can see primary and secondary. And for automatic for force failover, you can also use a script. Alter availability group, your availability group name, which is this avail group force underscore failover underscore allow underscore data underscore loss. So right now this instance is our primary. You can see under replicas, this is primary, A103 is primary and A102 is secondary. So let me execute this statement. You need to execute this statement from the secondary node, which is this. Execute. A failover happens once you do this. Command completed successfully. Now just refresh this instance. A102 will become primary, A103 will become secondary. Over here you can see the force failover has happened. And one more thing, availability group listeners. So if you remember, while doing this always on configuration, we have given some virtual name. Okay, so using that virtual name we can connect to this SQL Server instance and we can access those databases. So the customer or the client or the application will connect to this instance and it will be placed in either of this node 1 or node 2 depending upon the availability, and the databases are available there. Okay, so this is how the configuration is. So let us quickly see the advantages and its disadvantages of this always on configuration. First, see the advantages. It has a lot of advantages. It is both high availability and disaster recovery solution. It supports up to 9 availability replicas, and here we don't need shared storage as we use in failover cluster, and we can have multiple copies of database, and it supports automatic page repair for protection against page corruption. Likewise, we have in database mirroring. Let us see the disadvantages. This feature is available only in Enterprise Edition only. If you are going with a production server, you need to have an Enterprise Edition, which incurs a high license cost. And next, if Windows Server failover cluster is offline, the availability group go down and failover will not happen. And next, we can also have some bottleneck issues on busy systems. And when we deploy the SQL Server failover cluster instance, we cannot have the automatic failover. That is, instead of using the standalone SQL Server instances, if you go with SQL Server failover cluster instance, there is no option of automatic failover. I hope you have understood the concept. That's all in this video, and thanks for watching.